Boom! Another review. This time, got Xenoblade Chronicles X. I played this game for about 60 hours, and I have a review here. I wrote a review for the Game Fanatics. .com. And I'm not going to read my review necessarily, but I am going to kind of look at it as I do this, because this is a 60-hour game, and they're going to talk for like 5 minutes here. That if you had asked me 30 hours into the game, I would have given you a completely different answer as to how good is this game. I feel like it really fell apart towards the end, the last 30 hours. About 15 of those hours, maybe 10, were spent grinding. Just straight up grinding so that I could finish the game. And I understand maybe if I wasn't trying to review this or whatever, I would have done some of the other side quests, but I didn't want to. All the side quests are the same. All the side quests are go kill this or go gather this. Alright, I mean, I understand that that's basically every video game quest line ever, if you boil it down. But it's too much. There's too much, and it's so obvious with it. Oh, let's talk about the story too. The plot is interesting. I do like the plot of this game. However, it's for about 20 hours, nothing really happens, and once stuff finally does start to happen, hold on. That's good. That's helpful. There's once it does start to happen, there's not. It's like it introduces these really cool characters, right? And they're in there, and then they're there for like 3 missions, and then they disappear for the rest of the game, and they're never brought up. And you're like, that was really interesting, though. Why didn't we go into that? Why didn't we discuss some of these things? I guess no one gives a shit. Okay, why can't we get these more interesting things to come back? I mean, it took 20 hours to get not the final boss, the main bad guy to show up, which is just too long. Like, and the plot of them landing on this planet and like humans basically being hunted out of existence is very interesting, but it just ultimately is some very cool things that happen in an overall uninteresting sort of way. The main, like, the beginning's really cool. There's a couple scenes in the middle-ish area that are really cool, and then the ending's really cool, and then the rest is 40 hours of just missions. You're doing something. Speaking of the story, though, there are basically 2 main traveling companions with you that are the main characters besides your character, which we'll get to your player character in a minute. These characters, so you'll have to pick. Okay, so you get to a story mission. A story mission will say, hey, you need to have Elma and Lynn in your party. These are the main 2 characters. So you go, okay, I'll have those 2 people in my party. But there's other characters. There's Doug. There's Lau. There's another guy whose name I forget. There's this other girl whose name I forget. I played, the last time I played this game was like 3 weeks ago, so or 2 weeks. It doesn't matter. But the problem is, like, in a normal JRPG, you're going to have everyone in your party with you, right? Maybe only 4 people are fighting in a battle, but everyone's with you. And in this game, if you need someone, like if you need to have Lau in your party, and he's not already there, you need to go into the world, into the main city, and find him. And add him to your party in a ridiculous fashion that makes no sense. Furthermore, if you're supposed to have Elma and Lynn in your party, that means they're basically going to be talking during cutscenes. Your character never speaks. Your character is given dialogue choices sometimes, but they're not handled very well. They don't lead to anything interesting. And I guess we'll talk about it while we're here. Your player character is irrelevant and has nothing to add to the plot at all. Nothing. Nothing. You should be playing as Lynn or Elma. You should be playing as Elma. She's the main character. Okay, you should be playing as her. There's no reason to create a character person here. It doesn't add anything except giving you an avatar. But the avatar they give you is basically a thing that walks around or flies a robot. That's not worthwhile enough to have an avatar for. But back to the characters. So the characters you have in your party that are required for a mission will talk during cutscenes, right? If you bring Lao, let's say, along, but he's not required for the mission, then he will stand there like an insane person and kind of just do his idle animation and not say anything for the entire cutscene, for the entire story mission. So there are these characters that are interesting. Lao is interesting. Doug is an interesting character. But unless a mission requires them, they never say anything, which is, again, circles back to the original problem. If you just had every party member with you, like every other JRPG in existence, then you could have them talking during cutscenes instead of just Elma and Lynn, who are good characters, but they're limited by those two. And then they look at you every once in a while and say, what do you think? And you go, yes or no. And it doesn't matter which one you pick at all. Okay? Okay, positives. I'm looking over my review. Positives. The game looks great. The game plays, controls great. The combat is fun. We'll get more about the combat too. The mechs, the skells are great. Flying around is fun. I think of any game this year, this has the most interesting lifelike world. There's just creatures flying around. Like some of these places, when you first get to them, you're like, holy shit, I can't believe this is in a game like this. This is unbelievable. Beautiful vistas that, I said this in my review, rival or surpass things you can see in like The Witcher. They're just beautiful in this game. Now granted, it's not at the same resolution or visual fidelity, but what you can see in this game is amazing. And it's amazing that they did it on the Wii U, really. There's a lot of boring shit. Okay, you fight a lot. Now, I mentioned grinding, and grinding for about 10 hours. You have a class level you can level up. After you level that up, you can switch classes, but you're going to lose all your arts, which are the moves at the bottom there. And the skells have their own arts. And we'll get to that later, too. But the combat here, it gets a little monotonous, and it takes about 30 hours to get to the skells. And by that point, it's been monotonous for a little while. You're level 20 on your class. You don't need to level anything else up. There's no reason to change to another class unless you want another skill that you can use. Like, they're like passive skills you can use. And you can use any of those no matter what class, but the class moves are dependent on the class. It's just, you get to a point pretty early on, like 15, 20 hours in, where you're not leveling up a class anymore and you're done. Then you're just leveling up normal. And the way this game does equipment and damage values and a lot of stuff like that feels very MMO-y, which is a word now. In that, if this monster is 10 levels ahead of you, you are probably going to get squashed. And that's understandable, right? But even with no gear changes, okay, if you don't change your gear and you fight this guy who's 10 levels higher than you and you die, if you level up, no gear changes, if you level up 10 levels and fight him again, you'll fight him no problem. So there's a lot of back-end math going on here that scales up or down your moves, what damage they do, etc., depending on level. So that's why I had to level up at the end, because the last 30 hours of the game, basically, I didn't change my weapons. I didn't get anything new or better. I didn't get any new or better equipment for defense. None of that. For basically the last 30 hours of the game, last half of the game, I didn't get many new items at all. And that's a big problem in these games. I like equipping new items. You get to see everything's different. You get to see it on your character. That's cool. But it's all just a bunch of garbage. And And then you get the skells, right? And then so the skells have their own arts and stuff. So now you're using them. And the skells don't have normal equipment, and the skells are also super expensive. So if you die in them, you're gonna, if you don't have any insurance left, which I fucked up because I'm a moron, you're gonna pay hundreds of thousands of gold or money or whatever. I forget what the money is. And it's just not enough to keep you going. It's not that exciting. The beginning 30 hours when you were on foot exploring this world, seeing these giant creatures and running away because like you didn't want to be anywhere near them, and it's like almost an ecosystem of these tiny creatures and the larger was very interesting and very compelling. But as soon as you get the scale, it breaks down. The scales are so much more powerful that now you're taking on larger creatures, you're doing all these things, you're flying eventually, about 10-15 hours after you get the scale. You're flying, and that kills all exploration because you've already been everywhere. Now there's no surprises. You can escape anywhere you want to. You don't necessarily want to fight random creatures all the time in a scale, because if you break the scale, you buy it, potentially. It kind of falls apart, in my opinion, in that there's not a lot of interesting things left for it to say, and the scale portion of the game, which is half the game, feels like an expansion on an existing game. It's very strange. It's fun though. That's the thing, is like it was fun the entire time. Even the annoying grinding was fun. It's just none of it was so amazing or interesting, and after you get the scale, it just, here's a thing that happened, it wasn't exciting anymore. And I don't know, let me go further through my review, because it's so close to being just amazingly good. That's the problem with it, is like the story could have been incredible. The combat could have been incredible. The scales could have been incredible, and they kind of are. But they're like a completely different game, and they don't even fit. And they override everything. They override all your defense values, all your attack values. They're basically another character that now you're playing as, and you never will want to go into battle without them. And why should you? The game forces you maybe 3 times to fight without the scales after you get them. Maybe 3 times. And that's another reason why I didn't upgrade my equipment ever. Oh, I should bring this up. There's this one mission, if you happen to stumble upon it, and you can stumble upon it at the very beginning. But if you stumble upon it, you can basically be stuck there for hours at a time, and you can't leave the mission, and you can't further the story. And I won't go into it too much because it's obnoxious. But you can get stuck into this for hours at a time, and it took me 2 hours to beat this mission, even though I googled how to do it and where to find the items it wanted. It does not tell you how to complete it. And when you start an affinity mission, this is what it was, you don't know what you're in for when you start it. And that's a big problem. Especially since this mission is one you can pick right out of the gate. As soon as affinity missions become available, you can pick this one, and if you have no idea where to find these items or anything, could be stuck there for hours and hours and hours. And maybe that's fine for some people, but I don't want to do that. It's ridiculous. It's too much just garbage that they didn't need to have there. And it made me not want to do affinity missions, which basically go into character backstory. It made me not want to do any unless I had to, because I didn't want to get stuck in one for who knows how long. I mean, think about it. This was a 60-hour game. Okay? 5% of that is 3 hours. 5% of this game was almost spent in that one mission where I was frustrated and did not want to play the game. That's not good. That's not a good ratio. That's not good fun time. But see, there are shining moments. Like when the combat system is great, it is so good. It is so good. And there are so many great moments I had with this game, and exploring and even flying around and seeing everything. It's awesome. I almost don't recommend people play and beat the game. I almost just recommend you play it, and eventually you get skills, and eventually you can fly. But whatever, who cares? A more lackadaisical approach with this game, I think, will improve it. 100% will improve it. It's just not. The ride overall is frustrating if you're just trying to do the story, and even doing a little bit more of the story. But there's so much to do, and all of it is so mundane and not interesting. And that's the problem, is it does not try to be more than that. It just gives you a typical MMO. Here's the screen. I mean, we're talking like old school WoW. Here's what you need to do. Kill 5 of these. Find 3 of these. Like, we are way beyond this in terms of anything. And every quest is like that. And that's why I didn't want to do any more quests. I just want to do the story. Because the story, while incomplete and paper thin, is interesting when it's interesting. You just never know what you're going to get. Yeah, that's it. I wrote this long ass review, which I'll have to put the link for. But it's disappointing, is what it is. Very disappointed. But not like I sound super negative on it, because I see the potential, and there is a ton of potential, and it is a good, fun game. But it tries to do way too much, and it fumbles the ball all over the place in some of these missions and things. It doesn't fit right. If this had been a traditional JRPG, like a Final Fantasy or a Tales game, in terms of setup, in terms of structure, where the characters are all together, where you're exploring a world and it all logically is played out. The fact that you can get to level 20 in your class so early, the fact that the max level is 60, and that your stats auto improve depending on your level versus other things level, it doesn't make any sense in a way that's fun. Like, I guess it makes sense, but it isn't fun. As fun as it could have been had this been, I don't know, more thought out. It just feels like layer upon layer of good idea that isn't fleshed out. It's like an onion, but not a very good onion. But if you have a Wii U and you want a JRPG, this is the game. It is fun. It is good. Don't expect it to reinvent the wheel, and don't fall into its traps of the mission I've stumbled on that sucks. And other missions like that are obnoxious and annoying too. It's not that one mission. There are others where it's like I have to raise my affinity, which is basically how much a character likes you, with this character who I never used the entire game because you never gave me an incentive to put him in my party, and now you expect me to use him, and it's a circle of ridiculousness, of things that are just roadblocks when they don't need to be roadblocks. I don't know. And now you can see the sun in my face, so you understand. There's sun in my face. But that's it. That is Xenoblade Chronicles X. Good game, not great game. Definitely much better than the sun in my eyes. I will give it that. This has been the show where the sun goes in my face and I can't see anything. Record live at 3 p.m. Pacific time every Friday on Twitch. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Festivus, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Guy Fawkes Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, Easter, second Easter. That's not a thing.